Hey, how's it going, guys and girls? I'm going to start a new series on rhythm guitar. Rhythm guitar is the most important part of your playing by far. You can work on soloing, you can work on repertoire, you can work on every aspect of your guitar playing, but the most important by far is rhythm. When you think of the great players on the instrument, every one of them, without exception, could play rhythm really well and spoke openly about playing rhythm. So I'm going to delve into rhythm starting from a somewhat basic level and going up to more complex. Now, if you stay with me, if you think you're at a basic level and you're diligent in your practice, you will get pretty good at rhythm guitar. We're going to learn how to play rhythm using a pick and just basic rhythms using fingerstyle type playing. We won't get into arpeggiated types of playing much. So for now, we're going to do acoustic guitar. So get your guitars, tune them up, and let's get rolling. As you drag the pick across the strings, you meet resistance, obviously. So a thinner pick would meet less resistance. However, a thinner pick does not mean a better sound, so I want you to be careful of that. Getting thin picks may be okay at first, but you've got to quickly move to medium and possibly heavy. We're going to assume that you know a couple of chords. I'm not going to use a lot of chords in this first segment, but as we move on, and as we move on to electric guitar, we're going to go about as far as you can go with chords. So I want you to start really working on your chord technique too. Really start to memorize your fingerings, being able to switch chords pretty fluently. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is get your guitar, and I want you to mute out the strings. Now when I talk about muting out the strings, I mean just lay your fingers lightly across the strings so as to cut the sound of the strings from ringing open. Just like that. What you don't want to do is press down on the string. I want a clean sound, just like a click, because that's what we're going to use to get you used to some very common rhythms used in music and in the guitar. Now, once again, the muting technique. Just lay your index finger across the strings at any fret, and it should just knock out the sound of the string itself. Don't press down because you're fretting the note, and that's not what we want. Let's get into some basic rhythms. What I want you to do is take your pick, hold it as you normally would, whatever's comfortable for you, mute out the strings, and I want you to strike the strings strumming straight down. You can use a metronome if you want, but I assume you have ability with rhythm, at least at this level, to do quarter notes. We'll say 1 beat per measure. Now we're going to speed up the rhythm. We're going to keep the strings muted and go eighth notes. So if you cut a quarter note in half, you've got 2 eighth notes. Notice that I'm moving my wrist. I'm not moving my whole arm. My arm at the top of the guitar is fairly light. I'm not pressing down on it because if I do, it's going to cut off the circulation and my right hand's not going to function properly. So eighth notes. Now let's do a combination. Let's do a quarter note, 2 eighth notes, quarter note, 2 eighth notes. That would be 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. If you have to tap your foot when you do rhythms, that's probably a good thing. You really have to be aware of the count and where you're at in any particular rhythm. Okay, now let's move on to upstrokes. That was all downstrokes. Upstrokes are a little bit more difficult if you're just starting because the pick will feel like it's going to fly out of your hand. Now the upstroke is weaker. Number one, you don't have that force of gravity coming down on the strings when you're doing a downstroke. And number two, you're striking the thin strings first when you do an upstroke, whereas when you do a downstroke, you're hitting the bigger strings. The bigger strings are going to give you more of a click or a thud. The bigger strings are going to give you more sound, obviously, than the thinner strings. Super G is your 2, 1, 3, 4 fingering. We're going to do all quarter notes. Now let's do them in eighth notes. That's going to be 2 strikes for every quarter note. And if you'll notice, the first of the 2 eighth notes is always stronger. It's a downbeat. It's more like a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, now let's do the combination. This is just going to be quarter note, 2 eighth notes. Now we're going to keep moving ahead fast now. I'm going to do upstrokes, quarter notes. A little more awkward doing upstrokes. Now I'm still not bringing my arm up. It's all on the wrist. I'm making sure I'm hitting all 6 strings. Now let's do our combination, which is going to be a down up. Let's go quarter notes. Down, up. Now, let's do eighth notes. Now, that should feel a little more awkward. It should feel like your pick is in peril, like it's going to fly out of your hand at any minute. I'm going to go half speed. What I don't want you to do is to hold on to the pick harder. That's really not what keeps the pick in your fingers, believe it or not. It's just you're occasionally moving it back into place because it's going to move. It's going to want to move. And I'm using the Jim Dunlop jazz pick. Now I'm going to go to the bigger pick. Now, as I move faster, the motion becomes really more concentrated into the elbow up to my fingers. There's a natural tendency to tense up when you strum quicker. That's just a natural reaction when you're about to do anything that involves a little bit more skill. I want you to practice those basic patterns. They will go a long way in building up your rhythmic foundation.